What is Flora Essentials? That's one of the things that we have on the website. It's one of our oldest products from a probiotic standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? Why do we take it? What's it used for? Who needs it?
So Flora Essentials is one of multiple different probiotic products that we carry.
Yeah.
This specific product, Flora Essentials, is Saccharomyces boulardii. It's a single strain product, which is unique.
Yeah.
So what also makes it unique is that it's actually, because we always hear probiotic, good bacteria. In this case, it is actually a yeast strain.
Okay.
It has the properties of the probiotics that in general we all know about. But this one, again, its key characteristic difference and why it's in a single strain product is that it is derived from yeast. It's in a similar family to brewer's yeast, baker's yeast.
Okay. For those that are new to all of this stuff, what are probiotics? 10,000 foot view, 2-second version. What are probiotics? Why do we care?
Yeah, probiotics are good bacteria, good organism in this case more broadly. So they help to crowd out bad bacteria because it's key to have a balance in your gut of good and bad bacteria. Some more or less well-known benefits is they also aid in digestion with foods such as fiber and other resistant starches. They also can produce some beneficial substances along the way, namely short-chain fatty acids that are used to help build our gut barrier, the mucosal barrier in our gut. It also has an effect on inflammatory markers. So certain strains will help to decrease pro-inflammatory markers, such as interleukin-8. Other strains can increase anti-inflammatory markers, cytokines like interleukin-10. So in terms of supplementing with a product, which is ultimately what we're talking about here, studies have shown that probiotics do exert an effect through taking them in, through taking them orally, without colonization.
Okay.
So what's occurring again is you're taking in the probiotic, it's acting, it's working, it's doing what it does, but then it's not colonizing and growing and multiplying in your gut. So that is suggesting that for benefit, regular intake is needed.
Okay.
So there's good and bad. Obviously, you'd rather have, let me colonize with a good bacteria and then I'm good. The issue with, if that was the case, you would then, again, we're looking for balance here. You would have an overgrowth of a specific strain that you're taking in. And then you would end up having a higher likelihood of the GI side effects that can occur when you take probiotics in general, but especially maybe too much.
Okay.
Such as gas, flatulence, bloating, constipation, particularly with Saccharomyces boulardii, upset stomach.
Okay. So the bacteria is there. We're trying to help it. We're trying to make sure that there's the correct balance. But for this particular one, because it's a yeast-based product, it does not colonize in the gut. It's not going to take root and take over, which is why you have to continually take it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And again, we'll kind of get to trying to kind of whittle it down here, but I'm not saying that you need to continue taking this one. We'll get to that.
Okay. So if this isn't something that everybody should be taking all of the time, which is good to hear because I haven't been taking it. Who is this for? Why do they need to take it? When do they need to take it? Help me out there.
Yeah, there are studies showing that there are multiple benefits here, but the core in terms of what's differentiating about it and in terms of where there's robust evidence is in antibiotic-associated diarrhea, acute diarrhea, C. diff, Clostridium difficile, the management of those symptoms, and broadly speaking, a balancing of the gut microbiome.
Okay, so people who are on probiotic or on antibiotics, people who are having uncontrolled diarrhea, and people with C. diff in particular, those are the primary targets of this probiotic.
Yes.
Okay. So then what is unique about this probiotic that it works particularly well for those folks?
Yeah. So in terms of, we'll kind of start with the first one, antibiotic associated diarrhea, and also just the dysbiosis, the imbalance of gut microbiome that occurs. That goes back to the first key component I mentioned, which is that it's a yeast product. So the way antibiotics work is they are basically destroying the cell wall, destroying the antibiotic itself. A yeast cell wall is not susceptible to that. So that's the key, that whenever you're intaking that, you're not versus a traditional probiotic, which are great and have other uses. But that's the key there, is that this is not being affected. It's not being killed the moment basically right when you take it.
Okay, that's cool. That's fantastic. What about for folks with C. diff?
The key there with C. diff is that it typically follows antibiotic exposure.
Okay.
So it's kind of the cascade of effects, that there's a disruption of the gut microbiome. And then there's exposure. Oftentimes you see C. diff. It's primarily elderly, nursing homes, hospitals, those types of infections.
Yeah.
But in that, it is typically very severe. So that the key there is that this has been studied. And then, like I mentioned earlier, and the other component regarding C. diff, besides the balancing of the microbiome, is that there are fatty acids, short chain fatty acids, also in the colon. And that antibiotics disrupt the bile acid metabolism in the colon. So what then occurs is that C. diff then has a breeding ground to, if there's exposure, to multiply, to colonize, and to cause infection and symptoms.
Got it. Okay. And so this helps to counteract that by helping to crowd it out.
Correct.
Take up that space and give the other bacteria room to repopulate?
Yes, and it helps also to decrease the symptoms. So it's not anti-infective. It's not going to replace vancomycin or whatever antibiotic you may be using for C. diff, but it helps with symptoms. It helps to shorten the duration. And it also helps to prevent reinfection, which is common in C. diff.
That makes sense. What does dosage typically look like for somebody who's taking it for one of those things? What is that going to look like?
Yeah. So for children, it's typically 250 milligrams to 500 milligram. So that's 1 or 2 capsules of Flora Essentials. Adults you start at that higher end of the range. So 500 milligram up to 1,000.
Okay.
It has been studied in those doses as effective and safe.
And is it with meal, on its own, separate times a day? How does that work?
You can go either way with this one. And the question we get a lot is, I'm on an antibiotic. What do I do? And it's kind of back to the same thing. The reason why you're taking this in the first place is because it's not affected by the antibiotic. So whatever time of the day you're taking that, you're fine.
Great. That's fantastic. What else? Are there any other studies, anything that you want to cover that helps to flesh out this conversation?
Yeah. So beyond just antibiotic associated diarrhea, acute diarrhea itself. So that's from any cause, which could be bacterial, viral, parasitic, could be a medication, IBS, various conditions that you have, whatever the cause. Saccharomyces boulardii has been shown effective in decreasing symptoms. Again, we're not saying treating. We're not saying not to treat your IBS, not to treat that bacterial infection.
Right.
We're saying that in managing both the symptoms related to acute diarrhea and to the reoccurrence, Flora, Saccharomyces boulardii, has been shown to be effective. Okay, so acute diarrhea itself is defined as 3 or more watery or loose stools per day. So that at least gives you a marker there.
Yeah.
Again, Saccharomyces boulardii has shown to decrease the symptoms and the duration of diarrhea. So for example, there was a study done in the American Academy of Pediatrics. It was a systematic review of studies. So I like these. It's a study of studies.
Yep. Okay.
So the inclusion criteria was so strict. They looked at 1,248 studies. And I thought, wow, this is huge. This is great. And it is because they're looking at them, but they only had 22 that met the inclusion criteria.
Wow.
So just even broadly speaking, when you look at something like this, you could have pulled 1,200 other studies that would have shown maybe a bias or was not properly set up in one way or another that could have led you to a given conclusion. So that's why I really like this one. Again, at first I thought, oh no, only 22? Yeah. I wanted this larger, but it also makes sense because you're dealing with supplements, you're dealing with a probiotic, you're dealing with a pool of data that is always a little more controversial.
Yep.
Put it that way. So out of the 22 that met that inclusion criteria, Saccharomyces boulardii significantly reduced duration of diarrhea. The mean difference was 19.7 hours.
Okay, wow.
So significant.
Yeah.
Day 2 frequency of diarrhea was decreased by 3/4 on average, 0.74. Day 3 was further reduced by 0.41, and these are all compared to controls. So that significant decrease at every step of the way, and I think the key thing here is regardless of source or cause of infection. I want to emphasize again, this does not mean not to treat though. I have diarrhea. I don't want to take an antibiotic. I'm just going to take Flora. I'm only having diarrhea. That's not going to treat the underlying infection. So we still recommend that you get seen medically and traditionally. But what this can do is be an adjunct that probably isn't going to be recommended to you that has been shown to be effective.
Very cool. That makes a lot of sense. And I love that clarification. Always good. What else you got?
So there was also one of these kind of broad systematic analysis of studies. This was in the Therapeutic Advances in Gastroenterology.
Okay.
So they kind of went in a little more detail in each study, and I'm not going to go into all these. But the main one here regarding acute diarrhea is that they looked at 100 hospitalized adults, and they gave Saccharomyces boulardii for 5 days.
Okay.
They found that it significantly reduced the mean duration and the frequency of the acute diarrhea. They also found effectiveness in prevention of travel diarrhea, eradication of H. pylori stomach infections.
Wow.
Symptoms of Crohn's disease were significantly reduced in patients, again, after post-acute treatment.
Right.
So again, what that's saying is patients have been treated for a Crohn's flare. 3 months of treatment, outcomes were better in Saccharomyces boulardii treated patients than patients on placebo. They found similar effects post-treatment in ulcerative colitis, IBS, and parasitic infections.
Man, that's fantastic. So literally, it doesn't matter why you're experiencing this.
If you're experiencing this and you're dealing with the root cause, this can help with the symptomatology significantly, as well as balance your inflammatory markers and your gut microbiome overall. So again, a larger scale potential benefit, but this is what we can pin down and be certain of.
That's fantastic. That's really, really cool.